Good morning, everybody. My name's Louise Hamer. I'm a safeguarding lead nurse in Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust, and I've been asked to come along and speak to you all today about a project that we're working on with the University of Warwick and the Youth Endowment Fund that I guess, in the context of today's presentations, could be considered a form of suicide prevention work. So what do we know? We know the data that sets the scene for adolescent suicide in the UK. 544 young people aged 10 to 19 years took their own life between 2014 and 2016. 544 young people in 2 years, that's almost 5 young people every week. We know that of those 544 young people that took their own lives, 71% of them were male. We know that Lancashire is a national outlier for suicide, and we also know that the number of young people taking their own lives is rising. Crucially, we know that 65% of young people will take their own life and they don't have a diagnosed mental illness. And this statistic alone tells us that no amount of specialist CAMHS services or Tier 4 beds can solve the issue. What we don't know. So we know a little bit about the antecedents of suicide in relation to young people. So exposure to domestic abuse, bereavement, bullying, academic pressure, but this seems to be more relevant to girls than boys. And if 71% of young people that take their own lives are boys, actually, we don't know more than what we do. And from a trauma-informed perspective, we know that the neurological foundations for emotional regulation are laid very, very early on. And children will often struggle to manage traumatic events or stressful situations when they're older if they haven't developed the skills to regulate their emotions neurologically when they're little. Suicide risk in young men will often be responded to by focusing on the need to talk. And that's really, really important to encourage young men to open up, feel confident in expressing their emotions. But it's not always as simple as that, because we know that young men, teenage boys who are feeling sad, depressed, overwhelmed and hopeless find it really hard to talk. So therefore, the response is for us to listen. And listening often involves tuning into something much more subtle, such as changes in emotional presentation or behaviour, and interpreting that behaviour as a form of communication for all young people, but especially for young men who are distressed and they can't quite find the words. So how do young men tell us they're distressed? They usually show us, don't they? They externalise, they act out. The Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel produced a report around child criminal exploitation, and they identified 3 critical moments for us. So if we think about those 3 critical moments and how young people show us that they're struggling to regulate, what do we see? We see them get excluded from school. We see them get into fights, get injured and attend A&E. And we see them misuse drugs and alcohol, become embroiled in organised crime, and they get arrested. So there are 3 critical moments: school exclusion, A&E, custody. Externalised behaviour displayed by sad, angry boys can often be misinterpreted. It's seen as aggression, as something dangerous, and we're guilty of reacting punitively in the past through the criminal justice route mainly. But the contextual safeguarding agenda, particularly CCE, is about changing the perception of young men at risk of violent crime and seeing them as sad, frightened children who need our help through a safeguarding response. So that leads us to the Youth Endowment Funds and other chance projects and the brief trial that LSCFT are leading on with the University of Warwick. The trial will involve liaison diversion practitioners offering brief solution focused therapy, a form of psychological therapy to children coming into contact with custody. So it's therapeutic support at one of those critical moments. The reason we're using brief solution focused therapy is because it's brief and we know we haven't got long. A critical moment represents a window of opportunity, so the clock is ticking before the young person's gone and we've lost them all over again. Brief solution focused therapy is about moving forward. It's about identifying small positives in a young person's life that are present in the everyday but might have been overlooked. It's about finding exceptions to what has been framed as their normal problem behaviour. And in finding exceptions, we can sow the seed of hope for the young person that life can be different, life can be better, and that small changes are possible and they're all under their own control. So that's what the project's all about really. It's about hope, and hope as the antidote to hopelessness. And that's the main message. For us, any suicide prevention work needs to be built around hope. Thanks for listening.